Resident hospital doctors in England, who used to be known as junior doctors, have announced another strike as part of their long-running dispute with the government about pay. The strike, which is due to begin on June the 15th, is their 16th since March 2023. Hugh Pym, our health editor, is with me. So how bad is this going to be for patients, Hugh?
Well, Jane, yes, thousands of patients will be affected, but the NHS in England is saying that it is much more efficient at managing things now on strike days, and it'll be only about 5% of operations and appointments which do get postponed. And also, A&E units tend to work more effectively because you've got senior doctors at the front door of the hospital. They're more experienced and they're covering resident doctors who are out on strike, though it does cost employers more money to bring them in to cover. Now, the interesting thing is you've got a new health secretary, James Murray. It's his first big challenge. He's a former Treasury minister, so he's adamant that there's just no more money this year, he says, for pay. He says the resident doctors have already had or will get a total of about 30% over 4 years. Nothing more is justifiable. He says he will talk about working conditions. The BMA are arguing they still want another 20% over the next few years to compensate for earlier inflation. And they've said there could be another strike in July if this is not resolved. They say the timing is interesting, 15th to the 19th of June, because it coincides with the Makerfield by-election. And they're saying they want to hear from candidates, including Andy Burnham, the former health secretary, about what they think about the issue, and also other politicians, including the former health secretary, Wes Streeting.
Hugh, thanks very much. Hugh Pym. More than 30 million households in Britain face higher gas and electricity prices after the regulator Ofgem announced the energy price cap will increase by 13% from July. It's the first time that bills here have been affected since the US and Israel launched attacks on Iran. A household using a typical amount of gas and electricity will pay £221 more a year, with an annual bill of £1,862. Here's our economics editor, Faisal Islam.
These days, some energy companies have a high street presence, like here in Shirley, Southampton, where they can see the cost of living pressures for their customers in eating, heating and energy-saving tips.
It's a nice sunny day, put your washing outside and try and save the electric.
And you said switching off, unplugging things on standby?
Yeah.
That saves a lot, does it?
It does a little bit, yeah.
Thermostat?
Yeah, we've turned it off. We don't need it on this time of year.
The bad news is that energy prices, which had started to fall, are going up again from July.
It's going to be a big challenge for consumers, bearing in mind they've seen rents and food go up by 40% in the last 5 years. And we're seeing an increase in gas prices from the 1st of July of 25%. Electricity goes up by 5%. The good thing is, of course, people don't tend to use much gas during the next 3 months.
At the call centre upstairs, a disabled customer rings in after running out of cash for her prepayment meter.
I have down here that you have a stair lift, a hoist, electric bed, chronic...
We've just taken a call here today where the customer has oxygen machines, she has a stair lift and a hoist, she's medically dependent on her showering, and yet she's off supply because her top-up just didn't quite get her through. So we've been able to provide financial support for her today to get her on supply.
This is what's happened to overall typical household annual bills for both fuels over the past 4 years. It was significantly higher 4 years ago when Russia invaded Ukraine and the government had to step in with taxpayers' money to limit annual bills at the equivalent of £2,500. Today's announcement means that energy is 13% more expensive per unit starting on July the 1st. But it's also worth noting that electricity and especially gas consumption is down considerably in the past 2 years. So the newer measure of typical bills may be £1,663 a year from July and would have been just under £1,500 currently. And the question is whether these increasing domestic energy bills last until winter, where they really will hurt. And that depends entirely on events not here in Hampshire, but in the Strait of Hormuz and at the White House. A response of sorts to that volatility, electricity from the British Sun for Julie in Derby, covering her roof with government-subsidised solar panels.
Apparently with these 11 solar panels, I'll be able to run a washing machine 5 times. It'll run my fridge freezer. It'll run an LED TV for 40 hours.
Before the panels, she had been economising by using electric blankets to heat the person, not heat their home. Higher prices have already changed habits. There will be more to come. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
More than 18,000 properties are suffering disruption to their water supplies in Kent because of the heat wave. South East Water says towns affected include Whitstable and Ashford. The company has apologised, saying the problems are a result of increased demand following the hot weather. Hundreds of people had to spend hours queuing for water.
We should be getting water. It's our common right, isn't it? So what'd you say?
We had a brief spurt of it coming back on this morning and it's gone off again. And obviously with the children on half term, I work from home. So we're washing out of the sink.
Seems as though somewhere along the line, the water companies haven't been building enough reservoirs.
Well, our correspondent Sam Harrison has been following the story. Is there any relief in sight for these residents, Sam?
Well, Jane, this is yet another nightmare for South East Water and for thousands of customers across the South East region. This is the third time that some taps have been off since the start of December, and once again it's had a crippling effect on households. 13 separate areas, we think, affected across the South East. South East Water says that's all down to demand in the high temperatures. 660 million litres of water, they say they pumped out yesterday. That's around 100 million litres more than the average for this time of year. Now, lots of paying customers will rightly ask, what about the reservoirs? Well, South East Water says some storage reservoirs in this warm weather are particularly vulnerable. Around Whitstable and Herne Bay, they're saying the levels are critical. And they're even telling people in unaffected areas to perhaps put some water away in preparation. Is it going to end anytime soon? Well, the company says that customers need to keep an eye out. If the hot weather continues, if those reservoir levels don't come back up again, they say water supply will be intermittent.
Sam, thanks very much for now. Sam Harrison. The former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair has weighed in on Labour's leadership uncertainty, warning that the party was playing with fire and lacking a coherent plan. He urged Sir Keir Starmer to ditch some parts of his election manifesto and focus instead on cutting taxes and driving economic growth, but didn't call for a leadership contest to replace the Prime Minister. Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth reports.
He's Labour's most successful election winner, who spent more than a decade in Downing Street. Now, Tony Blair has issued a damning assessment of where the party finds itself.
It's possible we're about to have the 7th Prime Minister in 10 years. A serious country can't do that to itself. And what is bizarre about the present situation is that we're all talking about politics when the key thing is to talk about policy. If you don't decide what your policy direction is, there's no point in changing the leader.
His policy suggestions include easing net zero targets, cutting tax and regulation on business, reducing welfare spending and preparing for AI. Not all ideas align with the views of some in Labour.
It's not really about traditional left and right politics. In fact, I think that gets in the way a lot of the time of just asking the question, OK, look at the world. How do we make sense of it? How do we keep Britain strong?
His intervention comes amid questions about Labour's future and its leader, and his claim that the government doesn't have a plan wasn't welcomed by ministers.
We've got the fastest growing economy in the G7. We've got waiting lists in the NHS coming down by over 500,000. We've got free breakfast clubs rolling out in primary schools across the country. All of that is really important progress. Now, do we need to do more, and do we need to do it more quickly so that people can really feel the change in their lives? Absolutely.
This is a broad critique from Sir Tony Blair. He claims Labour is playing with the future of the country. He says it's not about personality or politics, but it is being seen by some as a warning against a shift to the left. And there's a clear message for some of those who might fancy themselves as future Labour leaders.
Among them, Andy Burnham, who's weighing a bid for number 10 if he first wins a by-election in Makerfield against Reform UK and other parties. Today he hit back, telling the Observer newspaper Sir Tony doesn't mention inequality once. While Wes Streeting, widely tipped to be a leadership contender, tonight told The Guardian the striking weakness at the heart of Sir Tony's intervention is that the defining issue of our age is barely confronted at all: inequality. It's a point echoed by others.
he analyses superbly the international context, the relationship with America, the relationship that we need to have with China and with the EU. He failed to address the huge question in this country about the inequality of the distribution of wealth. But hey, thank goodness we're having a policy discussion in the Labour Party again.
Sir Tony's intervention has undoubtedly sparked debate. Less clear is whether it leads to any change in direction. Alex Forsyth, BBC News, Westminster.
And these are the 14 candidates standing in the Makerfield by-election, which is on Thursday, the 18th of June. You can read more about them on the BBC News website.